Today is July 27th. My name is Jay Leask, and this is This Week in Teams.
Hey, and I'm Craig Jenke. I'm here with Jay. You gave me a funny look. I don't know why.
It's literally just my
glad we
face,
got
Craig.
This Week in Teams out right up front. I thought you were going to go a totally different direction with that. I don't know what it was, but I didn't think it was going to be This Week in Teams. But hey, it is July 27th. We are here for another week. Yay!
I really thought you were just going to repeat everything I just said. So
that's what I do.
Yeah.
That's how you reinforce behavior. You repeat it, you repeat it, you repeat it.
What are we doing again? So this past week was Microsoft Inspire. So Microsoft Ignite, you've probably all heard of. That's the big conference. 30,000 people all descend on. Well, in the last couple of years, it's been Orlando. This year, it's going to be virtual, I assume. Inspire is their that's for end users, developers, etc. Inspire is their partner conference, right?
Yes.
Or your partner conference, I guess. Let me tell you about your conferences, Craig.
It's not my partner conference. My partners have nothing to do with it. She just sits at home and
It's my conference as a partner. So it's Microsoft's opportunity to celebrate the partner ecosystem. Fun news for AvePoint. Our Singapore office, our AvePoint Singapore, not office, but the division was named Microsoft Partner of the Year for the work we do out there. A lot of fun stuff there. Lots of awards across the globe as Microsoft tries to recognize its partners for the work they do in helping build that network. Along with some news that came out of that, which we'll touch on in a minute, there was some very interesting news in the industry. The first one, of course, we've reported on this as often as stats have come out, which is every month to 2 months. But Microsoft is reportedly surpassing Zoom from a usage perspective.
Yeah, so that's pretty exciting. I mean, Zoom had the forefront for a while. Teams was rolling out. I think Zoom really is driven by the consumer, though, more than the business. So just enough businesses have made that switch over to Teams to really drive that adoption. And as we talked about it, if you're doing more than just video collaboration, Zoom is a good product for video collaboration. But if you need to be sharing documents, doing plans, the whole collaboration in general, you probably need a little bit heavier tool, especially to do it in a secure way. That's my little pitch for the thing.
No, you're absolutely right. And even people who are using Zoom are using that with Slack and with, Box or Dropbox or something like that. Like they're piecing together these different things to try and make the total package. And
which is interesting because one of the other news came out along that lines, and you just mentioned Slack, was that they filed a lawsuit in the European community. I'm not sure what you call that. In Europe to basically say that Teams was a monopoly, or Microsoft is trying to monopolize the whole collaboration policy, which came on the day of Microsoft Ready. So there was some speculation that they were just trying to steal some thunder. Or Inspire, not Ready. Sorry.
Yeah. Well, because Ready was last week also, right?
Yeah, Ready is our internal conference where we gear up everybody on the latest and greatest news and the guidance going forward for the new year.
Right. So. Yep. Yeah, that was really interesting. And really what they're doing is they're reigniting the conversation that happened during the Great Browser Wars, late 90s, early 2000s, when Microsoft embedded Internet Explorer into Windows. And the competitors like Netscape argued, hey, you're kicking us out by enforcing this technology be so ingrained. And now Zoom's argument, or Slack's argument, that is you are building Teams into your license, and therefore you're doing the exact same thing all over again, which I think is kind of amusing. Yes, they're building it in to their licensing for Office 365, but I mean, if you're using Office 365, why would you want to use a third-party tool that isn't integrated with any of your stuff? I don't know. I think it's mostly promotional, but I'm curious. I want to hear the arguments on this, right?
Yeah, well, I get it. it kind of makes it hard to compete that way for Slack and for other things. And I think you're going to hear a little bit more about that with Edge, right? Because I know Edge is being promoted as the browser of choice for the different Office 365 products. While I hear what they're saying, it's also, yeah, you're building a platform. You have you want people to use it, and you want them to be able to use it the most efficient way possible.
Yeah.
So I don't know how you do that other than.
And I would go even a step further in that I know plenty of customers who are using Microsoft Office and they're using Teams for the chat, but they're not using it for the video conferencing. Right. They're using Cisco WebEx or whatever for video conferencing. So it's not. I don't buy that it's precluding anyone from being able to go use another platform. So it's really an interesting conversation.
Yeah, you just have to, well, again, you have to compete. So you have to have a better platform and then give people a better choice. But
right.
If you want to go totally kind of separate direction, Apple's been doing that with their entire framework for years, right? Their operating system, their whatever runs on Apple, nobody really knows. So
nobody really knows.
Well, people know.
Fantastic.
I'm sorry. I didn't mean to say no one knows, but I mean, it's like you got to play in their system. You're not building. You got to follow their rules. They're a little bit more strict than I think what Microsoft had. Microsoft may have been a little bit in the past more exclusive, but they're really trying to be more open source and whatnot lately. So,
right.
And that gets me to transitioning to where do you want to go from here? We talked about a competitor, Google. So an interesting move with Google is they're making Gmail the center of their collaboration platform, and still the idea that, taking something that people are widely using on their platform, Gmail, and making that more of a center for and basically where the other systems are trying to get rid of email, Google's fully embracing it and saying, how can we leverage what was already here to make a better product?
I mean, they kind of have to. Google has tried with Meet and with the Google Plus network and with their various attempts at social capabilities. Like email is the one constant that has. I don't know. I don't feel like it's ever gone away. Like from a Google perspective, like Gmail is popular now as it ever has been, right?
Well, yeah, that, and they've done a nice job of actually their authentication process and being able to leverage your Gmail account for all your other accounts. Has helped them out tremendously, I think. So as far as people keeping Gmail, because like I still have an old AOL email address, but I can't log into anybody's system with that. So
no one should log in with an AOL email address anymore.
I use it for spam. So when I want people to send me spam, I register with that email.
Oh,
Plus,
man.
it's got it's like my first email account. So it's got all those great sent messages from like 2010 or probably 2007 is when
I think I go back to 2004 with my Gmail account. It's crazy. Like I did a search the other day and something came up. I'm like, oh my God, I forgot that even happened.
Yeah. I did have email before that. I always had Prodigy. So, we go back that far. Still dial up. Sorry. I digress. I sidetracked. So we have one other big news that's Teams related. We could do that now, or we could do that as a recap at the end, because I think that one is actually cool. The bottom.
So you want to do like a news segment where you're like, and after these commercials, we're going to talk about this. But first, let's talk about the boring stuff. That's what you're telling me right now?
Yeah, I'm telling you.
All right, so after these commercials,
we'll see if we can keep people to the end.
After
and if you are here to the end, subscribe to the channel because we need subscribers. So we're going to talk about the NBA. Subscribe now and then come back and we'll talk about the big news.
So we're going to talk about the NBA, but first, let's talk about Inspire, right? That's what you're.
Yes, that's where I was going with that.
All right, so moving to announcements from the Inspire platform, or from the Inspire conference, that is. The one that I think is most end user focused. You and I talked about it a little bit, maybe a month or so ago. They announced Google. They announced Microsoft Lists. They announced Microsoft Lists. And for the recap, Lists takes the SharePoint list concept and puts a business user front end on it. And it supposedly takes it out of SharePoint and makes it its own business user application, which means it's going to be easier to access, easier to utilize, easier to make user friendly, which is good. That's entirely what Office 365 is about. But now now they announced the generally available date of August, right?
Right. So yeah, that should be good. And I think we talked about, or maybe we didn't talk about this, but where that lives, right? So if you're doing your own personal stuff, that actually can be saved to your OneDrive and be in your own personal list, and then you can use it for business reasons too, where you would need like a group or a team to use that for. So you can segregate your data and have like a personal version of things, kind of like tasks and lists and stuff like that, and then you can also use it with your team stuff.
Yeah. Now, my assumption there is I haven't actually seen the descriptions of that. So my assumption is if you just create a list and start working on it, that's the one that gets put in your OneDrive. It's not like it says, do you want to put this in your OneDrive?
Yeah.
Right? Okay. And then if you want to tie it to a workspace, to an existing team, you would go to the team and create it there?
Yeah, create it from there. That's been my experience with it. I only played with it from a little. One thing I couldn't figure out to do, and it wasn't generally available, so when I was playing with it when I was playing with it about a month or so ago with the preview version, I couldn't really figure out how I would take a personal one, create it, and then move it to a team.
Right.
So I know that they were working on that, but I don't know where that's at. So I'm assuming that, similar to like we say, OneDrive is your personal, your personal storage, my stuff where you're working on it. And then once you have a thing that's you feel is good enough to share with the public, you might move it to a team so that your team can work on it.
Okay.
At least that's how I often do OneDrive, is I use it as my rough draft stuff for the stuff that I'm embarrassed about. I know if I put it out, people are just going to make fun of me. So I get it to a working spot, and then I move it to a team to share it with people. Similar to that with a list, I can do like a rough draft. I can play with it. I can look at it what I want, and then I move it to a team is what I'm assuming that could happen. Or I could just be using it for my own personal information to keep track of things that I am working on.
The long story short is we're still trying to nail down exactly what it will look like, aren't we?
Yes, we are. Maybe we'll talk about that more in detail when we figure it out.
All right. So Craig, the next piece, DataFlex. Talk to us about DataFlex.
So DataFlex was a big announcement coming out of Inspire. More because it was just a name change, but it actually has more implications than that. So it used to be called Common Data Services out of the Power Apps, Power Platform. They changed that to DataFlex, and there's kind of a couple different versions of it. There's the full DataFlex, which is still the Common Data Services that will be available for, Power Apps, Power BI, Automate. It's basically a full-on database. So, it's good. It gives it a little bit better name. That kind of goes along with the platform. It kind of describes better what it is, gives you a flexible way to work with your data. But there was also a thing called DBS, or not DBS, Common Data Services Lite, which was kind of described for teams, and so DataFlex for teams will be there too. So it's a lighter weight version that can run in the Teams platform and allow people to create Power Apps and applications that run on that and run in the Teams thing. So what that does is give you a little bit more flexibility to create apps that work more like a relational database model, as opposed to a lot of the apps now are created by using Teams lists. So the Teams lists are nice, but they're not as flexible as sometimes you might need, right? So they're just a list of stuff. So you can pull and you can update, but if you need things to be related to each other, then that gets a little bit tricky. So the big news on that is that it gives you the flexibility of having a relational database in the back end of your application in Teams versus having to use a SharePoint list. So it won't replace SharePoint lists for being a data source, but it will work for the apps that might need a little bit more robust of a backend engine. So the first place that they were putting it is in Teams to start with, and I'm assuming that it'll come to SharePoint and those things eventually too. And there's still the full version of the DataFlex that will power. Basically, it's built on Dynamics backend, so that will power the Power Platform.
So DataFlex Pro being the full version,
Yeah,
and then
Dataflex Pro.
Dataflex for Teams being the light version. The key there, and the word that I've seen thrown around in the last year, you've heard a lot about no code development, and no code development is great for trying to push something together pull it together really quickly, push it out into Teams or whatever. This is a low code solution, so it's more of a scripting platform than anything.
No, it's more like a database than anything.
More of a database. Okay.
Yeah.
All right. I clearly have to work on learning about it. And what I'm really excited about is next week we will learn more about it with my good friend Bobby Chang, who is a business applications technical specialist here in the DC area. He is mostly focused on public sector, but Bobby and I have been kind of dancing around the same circles for a long time now, and I'm very excited to bring him into the podcast next week to talk about this in significant detail.
Sweet.
Or
yes, look forward to that too.
Some detail. All right. What was next, Craig?
Next
Teams
was meeting
room. This one's you too.
Meetings rooms. So Microsoft was rolling out what we called it kind of MMR, Microsoft Managed Rooms, but it is now going to be kind of another new name change and rollout. So it was being played with, kind of a team environment setting, conference room settings with the Surface Hub and speakers and stuff in a room. Well, they're officially going to call it Microsoft Team Rooms now, and you'll see that rolled out kind of as more people are working from home, right? The office, we talked about this, I think, that the office space will change when people actually go back to the office.
Right.
We look at less of just a wide open seating, more hoteling, more need for conference calls. So like conference rooms where some of our workers are there and some of our workers are working remotely. So the team room, we're looking to that to be a little bit more integrated into the whole meeting environment. So Microsoft will, a couple of things with this, work to help their clients get set up with it, to get the equipment figured, make sure that everything works correctly. You can manage it through the Teams Administration Center. That's the big piece that came out of Inspire, was now it's not a separate place to be configured. It's configured right into Teams, or it's managed from Teams. And then they'll also, if you have the premium license, provide 24/7 support. So if you're trying to, hook something up and you can't figure out how to do it, you'll have a number that you can call and talk to somebody who can kind of troubleshoot with you. So that was cool.
So the rebrand is part of it, but really it's an interconnectivity with the rest of the communications platform, which is Teams itself. Okay.
Exactly. So rebrand and formally bring it into Teams as a managed environment.
So just to call you out, you've got one of these MTR pieces, in a box on the floor of your office or something?
Yeah, it's sitting right over there. I've had it for months. I'm supposed to be learning it, but I haven't. I've been too busy doing like Teams implementations and Teams governance. So
yeah,
someday I'll get to it.
Fair enough.
You know why I'll have to get to that? Because someday people will want to adopt that as a way of working, Jay. So
one day we'll go back to the office and you'll need to know, won't you?
Yes.
So the last piece here, we've talked about adoption a bunch. Mostly adoption is part of the Buzzkill podcast that I do. You and I try to stick more on the technology side, but a big piece of what's come out of Inspire there is the development of adoption.microsoft.com. This microsite is all about Teams adoption. It brings together, there's an adoption flip book, there are a series of day in the life guides, and one thing I thought was really interesting was the categories of engage your organization, train your organization, build champions, and secure my network. And if you look at that, secure my network being the last piece, not because it's the least important, but because if you focus on secure my environment first, then you miss the opportunity to figure out the business use of the platform, right? So I'm really excited to see what they do here. This is kind of it's a growth from successwithteams.com, which I've talked about for years now. And it also builds off of the certified adoption specialist
Yes.
which is something I took a year or so ago. And I think for organizations who are really trying to get moving, this is going to be really helpful. There are quick guides, there are checklists, there are things you need to consider from an advisory perspective. It's really really awesome. Like one of my favorite parts is there's a Teams training request for the CXO, the chief whatever officer. Like they're addressing it from different perspectives, so it's not just here's an end user guide, right? It's the realization that for this to be successful, you have to approach it from all angles.
Yeah, it's kind of the what's in it for me, which has become popular. Everybody
With
in order to adopt it, they got to know what's in it for them. And
Yep.
as you pointed out, the CEO has different things that he needs on it for him, right? Than what a frontline worker versus what a knowledge worker would need. So,
Yeah.
yeah, some really cool stuff there. And there's also, I believe, while you're in there, links to some of the other products like SharePoint and Yammer and those kind of things. So not necessarily just Teams adoption.
Well, yeah, and that's the thing, right? Teams is not the only thing that needs support. It's the central input for end users. So
Right.
if you're focused on Teams adoption, you're going to include things that are for SharePoint. You're going to include things that are the Power Platform. So that central entry point is what helps you kind of organize it all.
Yeah. And just to what I will just say, just a little side note that I think we talked about this, but Yammer Communities, a couple times that app has hit Teams
Yep.
about a month or so ago. And I will tell you, I love that. Yammer was okay, but I never used it because I had to go somewhere else. But now that I can get notifications right inside Teams of
Okay.
what's happening on in Yammer, that has been the biggest ad for me in the last couple weeks of anything that I've done in Teams. Just adding that little thing has helped me be more productive when I need to ask questions to a larger Microsoft Office than with outside my team or
That's fair.
audience outside the team.
I mean, frankly, it's nice to see Yammer included. Yammer
It's
has
not
spent
dying.
Yammer has spent so long as this thing they purchased that never got integrated. So to see it actually get integrated is a nice piece.
Yeah, well,
So
this
that's
was supposed to be the year of Yammer before, at least I think that's what Dan Holmes was putting out before
Yeah.
COVID, right? So they were really going to roll with Yammer and some pretty cool things with that and announcements, and they're working on some stuff with Yammer, but the whole COVID made Teams forefront. So
right. All right. Well, let's go back to Teams. Let's talk about the NBA, Craig.
okay, so big news, was that basically we're partnering with the NBA to see how we can make an improved fan
Yeah.
basketball experience by having like virtual people attend basketballs. So, and using Teams, the can't remember what the male mode is called, but the big
Together
audience,
mode.
yeah.
Yeah.
Together mode to be able to make it look like stands are actually in the fans.
Stands are in the fans.
The fans are in the
That's
fans.
fantastic. So I just shared my
Yes.
screen because I think this is worth sharing. It'll be really interesting. I think I read that this was going to be a 70-foot television that brings people connected from their own couch to actually be in the stands. I mean, clearly we're not talking about replacing the thousands of people that would normally be there, and there's some definite security concerns that Microsoft and the NBA have to figure out. How do they stay ahead of someone who puts inappropriate symbols on their screen and stuff like that. But I think this is the neatest. So baseball, a bunch of teams in the MLB put literal cardboard cutouts of their fans in the stands.
Yeah, the White Sox were actually selling them.
Yep, the White Sox, LA was doing it, Dallas was doing it, and I think someone in Florida was doing it. So which was great. It was a great way to get people in the field without actually being there. I'm really intrigued to see how this does. It just that interactivity that you can't have otherwise. It'll be really cool to see if it lasts. But how
who
exactly?
scoffed at me last week when I called Together mode stadium seating.
Stadium seating. That's right. It's never more have you been right than when you called this stadium seating, Craig.
And that
I
wasn't
suppose
a
I owe you an apology.
that wasn't a I don't even know what's called a prelude or whatever.
It wasn't insider knowledge.
I didn't know that this was coming, but when I saw it, I was like, Jay, you were wrong.
I will consider eating my words there. So yeah, it'll be really interesting to see how this works out and whether or not this works out.
And then if they start working together and sharing files while they're cheering while they're cheering their NBA team on, that'll be great.
That's exactly not
if
correct.
We can get them building power apps, and you can have the power apps virtual assistant take orders and then like have food delivered to them. I don't know.
No, what we need is a power app that does the wave, but it virtually decides who stands up when. A little AI to make them, everyone submits their picture like this, and then a little AI of this happening around the arena.
Well, it's video; they could actually do that.
Well, yeah, but the fact that together mode, your location changes, it's going to be very hard otherwise. You need something to tell the person when to do it, right? I can't just go like this and be like, "Oh, it's coming! Hold on! Here comes the wave! Here comes!" All right, this episode is definitely jumping the shark.
Jumping.
All right, so what did we talk about?
Oh, speaking of shark, it's Shark Week on Discovery Channel. Last week was Shark Week, but I did see that, was it Netflix is going to have a Sharknado marathon? You could watch them all on there. I don't know. You brought up sharks. I'm going to go sideways with that. I love sharks.
And that, my friends, is the end of the episode. Craig, thank you so much for coming together with me. To our listeners, thank you again, as always, for joining us.
Look forward to our guest next week. Pitch it again.
Bobby, I'm looking forward to having you on board, Bobby. We'll go from there.
And if you're still here, subscribe to the channel.
Oh, yeah, subscribe. Click this button or that button.
Need 1,000. We need 1,000 subscribers just before we look credible.
Not like we're trying to monetize, but we're trying to monetize. And we can't. So
we just
without your help, call 1-800 on the spot, and we will. Anyway, thank you.
Thank you, and have a good day.